And with EA Sports UFC 5, this is as real as it gets. For the first time in franchise history, UFC 5 is powered by the Frostbite engine.
And with the Frostbite engine, UFC 5 looks amazing, man. It really gave me those feelings of stepping into the cage.
That all starts with the foundation of the Real Impact system, authentic damage.
Damage impacts your fighter's attributes during the game. So, if you got a cut bleeding into your eye, it will lower your defensive abilities on that side of the body. And if you take one too many kicks to your lead leg, you'll start to limp, your mobility will decline, and your attack power will drop. Guys, I'm taking some calf kicks. They look just as painful in the game as they are in the octagon.
Working hand in glove with authentic damage is the all-new strategic element of doctors' checks and stoppages.
If you take serious damage, the ref might call in the doctor to check on you. Once you're cleared to keep fighting, you're going to have to switch up your strategy to protect that hurt area to keep the fight from getting stopped. And on the other side of this coin, can you make the most of your opponent's injury until the doctor has no choice but to stop the fight? While every fight starts on the feet, it should be just as fun to tangle on the ground. We got a new seamless submission system, and it really legitimizes the ground game in UFC 5.
The seamless submission system removes the minigames completely and functions as an extension of the overall ground game. This delivers a much faster and far more intuitive experience, keeping the action on the ground fresh and fluid.
The vision penalty icon appears when an athlete gets cut in areas of the face where bleeding could lead to visual impairment, like the brows, the eye, the forehead, etc. This leads to an increase in the amount of damage you take on the affected side while the penalty is active. If no further impact occurs to the affected location in 30 seconds, the penalty is lifted. The penalty is also lifted at the start of a new round. The breathing penalty icon appears when an athlete sustains an injury to the nose or mouth. This impact will decrease the short-term stamina recovery for as long as the penalty is active. If the athlete can protect against subsequent damage to the affected area, the penalty will be lifted in 30 seconds or at the start of a new round. These icons authentically represents the effect a submission attempt can have on an athlete. The heart icon appears when a player loses a chunk of their maximum stamina due to a deep choke. The goal here is to accurately represent how chokes, especially deep ones, can negatively affect an athlete's overall stamina. The arm health icon is meant to signal a loss in maximum block health due to a deep arm submission. Whether it's an armbar or a kimura, overextending the arm realistically leads to a reduction in blocking ability, and UFC 5 represents this authentically. The leg health icon signals a loss in permanent leg health when a player survives a deep leg lock. The stoppage icon will appear initially as a result of any facial injury, not including injury to the mouth. At first, the icon appears yellow, but as subsequent impact is received on the affected area, the icon will appear more red. The more red the icon becomes, the closer the ref is to halting the match briefly and requesting a doctor check. If the doctor examines the injury and determines it is not severe enough to warrant a stoppage, he will exit the cage and the match will continue. However, if he examines the injury and determines that it is indeed significant enough, he will signal to the ref and the match will end. It introduces brand new animations for punches, kicks, elbows, and knees. To talk about a few, the new leg kick animation is beautiful and the knees are so realistic and powerful looking. The new pivot left hook animation will come in handy when dealing with pressure, and the new front kick to the body animation is snappy and beautiful. But that's not all. With the power of next generation graphics, visual cues, as well as hit reactions showing just how impactful strikes are, have all been amplified. When you throw a strike and it makes impact with the athlete, improved facial deformation sends a ripple through the face. Initiating a submission in UFC 5, for example, a guillotine, you'll have two choices. You can choose to force your opponent to submit by crossing both feet behind their back and squeezing, leading to a tap, or you can choose to advance to the mount, a more advantageous position. And although you gave up the submission, you secured another favorable position. As the attacker, the direction of your inputs will always remain the same regardless of the submission. Up to submit, and down to advance to another dominant position. As the player who's defending, the directions of your input will also always remain the same regardless of the submission. Left to escape and also right to escape. Well, rest assured, the team accounted for this concern because in tandem with the regular HUD displaying head, body, and leg health, an additional gauge now shows your submission health. Depending on the strength of the submission, your athlete's submission defense stats, as well as your current stamina level, it might require as many as 3 submission attempts to completely deplete your submission health. And when that happens, the submission is instantaneous. It is important to note that despite this protective measure, one-shot submissions remain plausible in UFC 5. These occurrences are exceptional and typically happens when a player has severely mismanaged your stamina, granting the attacker a substantial stamina advantage upon initiating the submission. Contextual submissions have also been expanded in UFC 5. If you find yourself in side control and you try to escape to half guard by framing and bridging up, be careful because your opponent could very well counter that with an arm triangle. If you find yourself entangled in a rubber guard and you try to recover the full guard, also be careful because you could find yourself fighting off an armbar. UFC 5 introduces a multitude of contextual submissions that, once mastered, imbue the ground game with a heightened sense of authenticity. Adding to the authenticity of the ground game, the ground and pound system has also been revamped. All new ground and pound animations, from straight punches to hooks, including high impact elbows to the head and body, accurately captures the visceral reality of ground and pound. And unlike past iterations of the game, when you stop the opponent on the ground, the reaction they give you is believable.
If you have pretty much a whole round on the ground, your stamina, like your permanent stamina consumption, should be similar to if you have a whole round striking. The ground won't be like a refuge of almost no stamina cost anymore. With the new submission systems, seamless submissions, we added a lot of depth, but we didn't want it to be intimidating for new players or players who are starting to grapple. You can play grapple assist within submissions. It all flows, like for a casual player, like it's pick up and play. You're not going to play at a high level, but you're not going to get stuck. Now there's no more meaning game. And when you're using grapple assist just continues to work as you get into the actual submission. You can use the submission intent to just keep going and finish your opponent. If you're defending, just trying to get up, you can keep just doing that. Or if you're trying to ground and pound, you can escape a submission right into a ground and pound position to punish your opponent for doing it. Do you try to submit you? You can even, as a defender, use the submission intent to counter a submission to one of your own if your fighter can do that. A lot of the fanciest things in this system actually happens a lot. You get to see a lot of cool animations because you're often sort of, especially if you have 2 beginners playing with grapple assist, you're constantly racing. And when you're racing, like, you know that's when you see the coolest stuff, right? We get into an armbar, like immediately you try to escape, I try to finish, we go into a belly down armbar, you flip, and then end up inside your leg. All of these crazy stuff, the coolest stuff, actually happens a lot when you're playing as a beginner. In your own pace, you can start to explore depths and changing controls and so on and so forth. And there are more changes to the ground. So it was almost impossible to get to back mount and back flat positions, because when you're doing it, the people could just roll for free and end up back sitting, which is a little less dominant for you. They cannot do that for free anymore. If they have a stamina advantage, they can do that just like in UFC 4. If they don't, they can't. So now there is a new contextual transition there for when you're trying to get back mount and they're trying to roll. It's a brand new result. I won't say what it is, but it's not back sitting. Now it should be much more viable to get to the actual back mount and back flat and use the submissions from there, which are supposed to be very juicy, and they are.
With the real impact system, intuitive striking controls, improved defensive tools, and all new submission mechanics, EA Sports UFC 5 offers the most immersive, authentic.
The main thing is that it is easier to prevent people from clinching you by striking them. This one frustrating thing is that, okay, they're gonna clinch me, I'm just gonna punch out of it. But in UFC 4, almost always you would punch them and they will clinch you through it as an exchange. Exchanges into the clinch can still happen, but if you're punching someone with a straight attack, we figured that it would make sense that that should be the thing that would kind of push their face away, not let them clinch you. So any jab with straight will nullify a clinch attempt. Now, furthermore, any retreating attack, like any sort of retreating attack, makes the clinch not stick to you. You're moving away, right? So they can't clinch you if you're using a retreat attack. And we made more subtle changes to the flow of when you're striking someone as you're trying to escape the clinch. For a specific window, they can't block when they're actually exiting, right? That is still possible, but it is harder to do now, and it is especially harder from the cage single under position. But the defensive striking the clinch is generally more powerful than it seems. The truth is that if people clinch you through your strike, you actually have the upper hand. If you continue to strike, it will take them out of what they're trying to do. Like it will interrupt the knee that they try to throw you and stuff. The frames part of it is just the first part, like the first buff. And it was also buffed regarding the stamina cost. It now costs a lot less across the board. And the vulnerability was decreased and the mitigations were increased. We also added mitigation to when you try to dodge sideways against a frontal attack and it still catches you. So if you're trying to dodge a jab but you don't get out of the way in time, it will still grant you a little bit of vulnerability because you're slipping out of the way. So it's like the punch is glancing off.
Showcasing UFC's massive presentation updates in truly innovative fashion is the all-new Cinematic KO replay. Thanks to the power of Frostbite, players can now re-watch their finishing blows in stunning visual fidelity.
Those super slow motion finishes with all those cinematic camera angles and lighting, it really turns your knockouts into a work of art.
Plus, we've added improved interactions with the referee in ground and pound stoppages and added the ability to go to a draw on the judges' scorecards in online play, which is something we know you've been asking for. UFC 5 is truly an extension of the UFC fan experience, thanks to Fight Week, an all-new series of features and challenges synced with real-world fight events that bring you more content and rewards than ever before, like the all-new alter egos, which let you play as your favorite fighters in their authentic career-defining moments, with up to 4 new alter egos dropping per month. It's a staggering level of content. Career Mode offers an all-new introduction, and Coach Davis is back to guide the player through their UFC career, along with help from none other than the Bullet herself, Valentina Shevchenko, who crushes it as an all-new NPC.
This is the best training facility in the world. There is no place like it.
Then there are new cinematics, locations, and a refined focus on onboarding. And last but not least, and trust me, it's not least, if you pre-order UFC 5, you'll receive a roster of legendary heavyweight fighters, including Muhammad Ali, Mike Tyson, and the last emperor, Fedor Emelianenko.
Fedor? Come on, man. That's too good.
Thanks for joining us, DC, and thank you all for watching. We're excited for you to find out for yourselves that UFC 5 is as real as it